this is Lynn Modishon from Modishon's Herbals here at the shop. I'm fresh off a yoga class today. I never have been to one before, and went to one today and had a whole lot of fun. It was very interesting, and it was also very good movement for me. So I think this is something that I may end up doing more frequently. So we're here to talk about slow living, and I posted about it a couple days ago, and sort of took inventory of my life and where I'm at and how things are going, and decided that I needed to make some changes. And we also talked about that earlier on in the month, and talked about how long it takes to create a habit. And that was surprising to me as well. So slow living is actually living with intent. It is looking at what is important in your life, living in the moment, and making better choices. So it started with a slow food movement. That slow food movement started in Italy in 1989. And that movement was started as a response to two events that took place in Rome. One was the opening of a McDonald's in the center of the city, and the other was the sale of cheap wine made with methanol that caused the death of 19 people and poisoned many more. The head of this movement set about defending Italian culinary traditions by showing how they were at risk. The cheap wine incident also supported Petrini's drive to raise awareness. Italian wine exports fell by more than a third, and demonstrated that protecting the country's culinary heritage was not only important culturally, but also economically. In 1989, the slow foods came to life when delegates from 15 countries from around the globe signed the initial manifesto. The manifesto promoted living a better quality lifestyle, finding pleasure in food, and protecting local tradition. Now, here in Washington, we have a movement that started quite a long time ago, called Farm to Table. That's a lot of talk about eating local and eating healthy. At the turn of the 20th century, most of the food that Americans ate came from within 50 miles of their home. As technology improved and the ability to move food further and keep it fresh grew, we started eating outside of the seasons that were local to us. We could get fresh vegetables from the southern hemisphere and enjoy avocados and tomatoes in the middle of winter. This was nice for our palate, although sometimes the price for the food out of season was not so nice for our pocketbooks. We also started eating a lot of processed foods like TV dinners and canned foods that used excessive amounts of salt, sugar, fats, and some chemicals to preserve these foods and make them taste better. I remember when my kids were young, we would go grocery shopping once a month. Everything that I made from scratch. So when we went grocery shopping, we were buying things like 50 pounds of oats and 50 pounds of flour and 50 pounds of rice, and then, bulk quantities of meat and things like that. Now, I also did a lot of canning during that time, so most of the fruits and the vegetables were home canned in the late summer and early fall, enough to last us for the entire winter. It was a big trip to go grocery shopping, and I had 4 kids in 5 years. So we had a bunch of kids going grocery shopping with us. So the family of 6, we went every time we went together. And as a reward for good behavior, they got to choose, most of the time, they would get to choose a TV dinner. That was exciting for them because everybody could have something different. It was exciting to me because all you did was throw them in the oven. And that's before there was a lot of microwaves around. And it is, and so it made an easier time for dinner after going grocery shopping for, a huge amount of food. I couldn't have dinner made before we went grocery shopping, because looking at the time that my then husband got home from work, cooking and eating we would not have gotten out to the grocery store until 8 or 9 o'clock. And my kids were generally in bed before that time. So this was the easiest way to make, a hard day a little bit easier. The thing is that these TV dinners are a lot of processed foods, and eaten regularly can lead to health problems such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, cancer. That's not good. The farm-to-table movement began in the 1970s with the hippies. They started a movement to support the local farmers and eat organic, local, and natural foods. A shout out to Washington. One of the pioneers in this movement includes Jerry Tromfeld of the Herb Farm. It has taken, however, until about 10 years ago to really catch on. And so what is considered local, and why do we care? According to the definition adopted by the U.S. Congress in 2008, in the 2008 Food Conservation and Energy Act, the total distance that food can be transported and still be considered a local product is less than 400 miles from its origin. That gives you a wider variety of foods available to you than simply what is in your town, because here in Washington, that gets you over the mountains, and so it's a whole different climate over there. And so we get fresh foods earlier, not faster, but earlier than if we were dependent upon all of the farmers here in Western Washington. It is the reason that you want to eat local is because food that has to be shipped long distances and then sit in distribution centers and at the grocery store has to be picked before they are fully ripe, long before they are fully ripe, depending upon where it's coming from. Apricots. Have you ever eaten an apricot fresh off the tree? The difference between a tree-ripened apricot and a store-bought apricot is amazing. Apricots are really a very sweet fruit. The ones you get at the grocery store, because they were picked so green, are actually rather bitter. And it is so, I don't care what sale is on apricots. And if it's at the grocery store, I don't buy them because they are not at all good. Because it was picked so early, the sugars that make it sweet didn't fully develop. Now, if the sugars didn't develop fully, how about the nutrients? I don't know that anybody has ever actually tested the nutrients, and I'm sure that the foods that are picked meet minimum nutrient tests, but are they the food at its best? Local foods can ripen on the tree or the bush longer, and it will taste much better. Look at tomatoes. I mean, pretty much, I think almost everybody at some point has grown one tomato plant. And the tomatoes that you get off of the bush at your house versus the ones that you get at the grocery store, again, the taste is huge difference. Now, not everybody can have a farm in the backyard, and it's very hard for most backyards to make a big enough garden that would support you for, a year. So you can still grow your own foods. Now, for people who live in apartments or that don't have balconies, because you've got container gardening that you could do, you also have pea patches all over the states of Washington and California. Here in Washington, we call them pea patches. They're a parcel of property which is used for garden allotments. Fun historical information is that the name pea patch which I actually thought was PEA patch, because I've never seen it written. I just heard the name. But the P actually stands for Picardo, after the family who owned the Picardo farm in Seattle's Wedgwood neighborhood, part of which became the original pea patch. Currently, there are 56 pea patches here in Seattle alone. If you are interested in participating in a pea patch contract with your city government, call and ask about community gardens or pea patch. There's, I know of a couple in Marysville as well, so they're all around, and it is, and close by a lot of different areas. So it's something that you could do if you really would like to have a garden and you are not able to have one where you're currently living. Another opportunity for local fresh produce is a CSA. Now that is community supported agriculture. And this is how it works. A farmer offers a certain number of shares to the public. Typically, the share consists of a box of vegetables and or fruits, but sometimes other farm products may be included. Interested consumers purchase a share and in return receive a box of seasonal produce each week throughout the farming season. So benefits for you: you get to eat ultra-fresh food with full flavor and vitamins, because they were not picked until they were ripe. Usually your boxes come with recipes to cook some of the vegetables that you may not be totally familiar with. You can also build a relationship with the farmer and your family if you want. CSAs are not always confined to produce. Some farmers include the option for eggs, homemade breads, meats, cheeses, etc. Now, there is a shared risk with the CSA. A lot of the CSAs take their payment up front for the whole season, and the farmers do their best to provide an abundant box of produce each week. If things are slim, members are not typically reimbursed. The result is a feeling of we're in this together. On some farms, the idea of shared risk is stronger than others, and CSA members may be asked to sign a policy form indicating that they agree to accept without complaint whatever the farm can produce. The farmers cannot influence the weather. And so last year, most of the home gardens didn't do as well as what they typically do. And so there is that risk. But again, the shared risk is part of what creates a sense of community among the members and between the members and the farmers. If a hailstorm takes out all the peppers, everybody is disappointed together. And together cheer on the winter squash and broccoli. Most of the CSA farmers feel a great sense of responsibility to their members, and when certain crops are scarce, they make sure the CSA gets served first before they sell to anybody else. There are other CSAs that charge per box that you receive, and you can choose to receive the amount you need. I mean, obviously, I'm a single person and only me in the house, and I would not need the same amount of fruits and vegetables that a family of 6 would need. And so usually there's an offering of a small box or a large box, and you get to choose what it is you want. It is, there are also some you-pick farms around here in Washington. When my kids were little, we would go to the strawberry fields. We'd always go to Behringer's. That was in Marysville, and we would pick strawberries. And we would probably pick about 200 pounds of strawberries. I'd bring them home, and it would be made into jam and syrup. Some would be frozen. Some would simply be canned in a simple syrup. And we would have some really good strawberry shortcake while the strawberries were being processed. Another part of slow eating is eating seasonally with local foods. Depending upon where you live, your planting growing season is a little bit different. Our bodies need different nutrients during the cold weather than they do during the warm weather. Typically, we need more nutrient-dense foods for the colder weather. in order to create a heat system in our body that helps keep us warm, and lighter foods during the warmer weather for the same reason, so that we're not overheating. And typically, most folks aren't anywhere near as hungry during the hot weather, because cooking it is a pain, and it just creates too much heat. So if you're eating local, the majority of food grown will be what your body needs seasonally to sustain your health. Slow eating is living with intent, the intent to leave a smaller carbon footprint, the intent to savor some of your time. Most of us live high-stress lives. If we slow down and enjoy more, we have better health, more enjoyment, and be more grounded and connected both to the earth, to our friends, and to our family. The other part to slow eating is reading labels. Because if you read the labels, then you know what you're eating. And that is why I can. So this is a jar of tomatoes that I canned last summer. And I know exactly what is in here. And what is in here is tomatoes, a little bit of salt, like a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of lemon juice, citric acid. So that's exactly what's in here. There's no sugar added. There's no other preservatives beyond the lemon juice. And they taste really good, I have to tell you that. Now, Hunt's diced tomatoes, if when you read the ingredients in here, diced tomatoes, tomato juice, less than 2% of salt, citric acid, and calcium chloride. So the only thing in here that is different is the calcium chloride, which is a preservative. Obviously, I have a jar up here, or a can here. I would eat these because there's not a whole lot of extra stuff in there. There's no sugar added, and a minimum amount of calcium chloride. So I would feel very comfortable eating this. Now, beef tamales. In here, there is water, beef, cornmeal, oats, 2% or less of salt, soybean oil, chili pepper, flavorings, tomato paste, modified food starch, high fructose corn syrup, spices, caramel coloring, jalapeno pepper, and contains trace amounts of soy protein. Now, the problem with this is if you have an estrogen-based hormone imbalance, you're not supposed to be eating soy. Now, as I'm looking at this can of beef tamales, I have to tell you, it never occurred to me that there would be soy products in here. And it is, again, if that was a problem that I had, this could upset my health. It's also got sugar in here. And when I made tamales, I didn't put any sugar in my tamales. So, cream of mushroom soup. Again, water, mushrooms, vegetable oil, corn, canola, and or soybean, modified cornstarch, wheat flour, cream, and again, 2% of salt, whey, soy protein concentrate, monosodium glutamate, yeast extract, dried garlic, and natural flavoring. There's a lot of people that are allergic to monosodium glutamate, and I do not use any of these oils, corn, canola, or soybean, in my cooking. I use olive oil or avocado oil or sesame oil. These, I don't use those. It is, but again, I mean, that being said, I use cream of mushroom soup. I mean, I don't think there's a great many people use that for casseroles, and I am one of them. But I don't do it every night. And I also actually, if I'm not being lazy, I have a recipe for making my own cream of mushroom soup. And I usually have, if I don't want to go out and buy fresh mushrooms, I've actually got dehydrated mushrooms at my house that I can reconstitute and make a real nice soup with that. Now, I've pretty much quit buying soup except for clam chowder. Now, again, I'm used to cooking for a family of 6, and so it's really hard for me to downsize to a family of 1. And so the clam chowder in a can is something that is like 1 or 2 bowls for me, and that works out really wonderful. Clam chowder doesn't keep very long, so if you're making a huge pot of it, you're going to lose a lot of it if you don't figure out how to preserve it. And milk doesn't always freeze nice. It oftentimes separates. So I hesitate personally to freeze anything that has a milk base, soup or broth. Now this one, it says no artificial flavors, no colors from artificial sources, but it does contain bioengineered food ingredients. It contains clam broth, dried potatoes, clams, soybean oil, water, modified food starch, onions, less than 2% of soy protein concentrate, sugar, salt, potassium chloride, cream, sodium phosphate, butter, whey protein concentrate, natural flavors, spice, dried parsley, dried celery, and yeast extract. So I may have to look for a different kind of clam chowder, because I will admit that I did not read that before I bought the can. And I'm thinking that's an awful lot of stuff in there that doesn't really need to be in there. I mean, I don't put sugar in my clam chowder. I don't put the sodium phosphate. I don't put potassium chloride. I put milk and cream, but I don't put additional whey or soy protein concentrate. So and the other thing that I have discovered, to be honest with you, is canned soup I don't like the taste of canned soup as much as I like the taste of my soup. And I know that when I make my soup and then can it, and I do that, I have got at home right now, I've got some beef stew, I've got some potato soup that is already canned, I've got French onion soup that's canned. The taste is so totally different from the taste of the canned soup that you get from the grocery store that it makes that I don't even like it. So I've quit buying it. Like I said, all except for this, and now I'm going to rethink that. So slow living or slow food, slow eating does not mean you sit at the table for 6 hours. It doesn't mean that you can only cook everything from scratch. It means living with intent and being mindful, looking at what it is that you're buying. And I know that avocados, I'm looking forward right now because avocados are in season, and so they should be better tasting, and they won't have come from the Southern Hemisphere. I hope this helps. I hope it gives you some thoughts, and we'll be talking more about slow living in next week. And if you have any questions, do let me know. And thank you.